Not long ago, I was talking about how I would like to learn more about Great Britain. Not the Great Britain that my mother grew up in the 40s and 50s, but what's happening there right now. And in response to that, I have a good friend named Patrick Thompson, and he gave me this book by John Lanchester called Capital. It's a book about a neighborhood in South London that was originally for lower middle class people, but like many other neighborhoods, during the last part of the 20th century, property values had just escalated so that anyone who already lived there and owned a house suddenly was a millionaire, and the only people who could move into the neighborhood would have to be very wealthy people too. It begins with a funny message that everyone in the neighborhood receives, and the message says, "We want what you have." And so part of the mystery of the novel is unfolding and finding out who is leaving these messages and what do they mean. At first they thought that there was from like a local real estate people, but pretty soon after it seemed like that was not the case. And so we begin to see into these characters' lives. What I love about it is it's a God's eye view into their lives. So we see both their strengths and their weaknesses, but from a sympathetic perspective. So there's Petunia, who's the oldest resident, or the only person who was born actually in that neighborhood. We see her as she tries to navigate the health system in the UK. We meet her daughter, Mary, who's looking after her old elder mom, and her grandson, who's like a Banksy-like artist who does these anonymous art installations in London. There's Freddie, who's a 17-year-old soccer phenomenon. He plays in the Premier League. His father is there from Senegal with him, and Mickey is kind of their translator. It helps them to understand society in London. They're also an investment banker whose name is Roger. And Roger is basically trying to get £1 million bonus, a 1-year bonus, £1 million. And he's so afraid that if he doesn't get it, that terrible things are going to happen because he's so overextended with his wife. They've bought so many luxuries that the luxuries, they can't live without them. They have 2 sons. And we also meet Arabella, his wife, who resents her husband so much because he's so clueless about what happens in their house. One of the interesting families is a family that is from Pakistan. And so they own the convenience store that most everybody in the neighborhood goes to. There's 3 sons, and they all look after the store at different times. And then finally there's a character from Zimbabwe. Her name's Quintina, and she's escaped from Zimbabwe barely with her life as a political refugee, arrived in the UK. She's not allowed to legally work there, and yet she's gotten false papers to get her a job working, giving tickets to cars that are illegally parked. And so we begin to see what their lives are like, what makes them tick, what their hopes and their dreams are. But not to spoil too much of the book, but the Muslim family's son is arrested on charges of being part of a terrorist plot. And so he's basically kept in a small cell, not allowed to have anyone visiting him. And at one point, his family delivers a Quran to him, a copy of the Quran. And in that book, this young man begins to feel this extraordinary sense of the expansiveness of God, the comfort of God's love. And wherever you are, I pray that you have a sense of that comfort and that love, that power, because all of us are struggling in our own ways with our own challenges. All of us are trying to understand one another. We're trying to see into each other's lives and be sympathetic and generous to one another. But God is the one who helps us, even through terrible challenges, to be able to be true to who we really are, which is that spirit of generosity and love that I believe is at the core of every person. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral here in San Francisco, California. Thanks for watching More Good News.